Haunted houses, they're an absolute staple in the horror genre. It's impossible to get away from that haunted house if I don't move out of the f***ing way. As I was saying, when it comes to long-running horror anthologies, it's impossible to get away with not having haunted houses involved in one way or another. And Tales from the Crypt is no exception. By the way, if the background looks different at any point in the video, or I look different, it's because this video took so long to make that I've had to split recording into separate days. Anyways, for a while now I've wanted to do separate videos about these Tales from the Crypt episodes. But then I thought, you know what, each one revolves around a haunted house. So I might as well just categorise them all into one and rank them in the same video, from best to worst. And that's exactly what I'm doing here. Two of them are real haunted house stories, Television Terror and Surprise Party, and the other two feature physical monsters rather than ghosts, House of Horror and The New Arrival, even though you can definitely consider The New Arrival a haunting, cause it is. I did actually try to look for additional episodes about haunted houses, but there aren't really any others. The only other one that comes even close to being haunted is an episode called Stared in Horror, but even then it's not really. In that episode there's a curse on the house that causes the woman to get old when she goes downstairs. There's nothing really scary about it and there aren't ghosts in it or anything, it's just got an eerie premise to it. It kinda reminds me of the M. Night Shyamalan movie Old, except that movie is set on a beach and it's a piece of shit. And that's literally the only episode I could think of that was almost what I was looking for, but in the end it wasn't. And as I already mentioned, today I chose the only 4 episodes that actually made sense. Television Terror, The New Arrival, House of Horror and Surprise Party. I'm going to go from the highest rated ones to the lowest rated ones, so don't be surprised if the order is jumbled, it's gonna be. I'll go from Television Terror to The New Arrival to House of Horror to Surprise Party. I'll be starting with the one that every Tales from the Crypt fan loves, or at least knows about, Television Terror. Tales from the Crypt fans literally drool from their mouths at even the slightest mention of this episode. It's that f***ing good. It's widely considered to be one of the best episodes of Tales from the Crypt, as we can see by the fact that it's sitting at number 4 on the highest rated episodes. Not only that, but many people also call it one of the scariest episodes. I keep seeing people online saying that it terrified them as a kid. They shouldn't have even been watching it as a kid, like it's not, Tales from the Crypt isn't a kids show. Television Terror is the 16th episode of the 2nd season of Tales from the Crypt, and it's based on the original story Television Terror from the EC comic book Haunt of Fear, which was released in the 1950s just like all the other Tales from the Crypt EC comics. Anyways, welcome back to Crack Attack. I better stop boring you to death. Let's just get into the first episode of the 4. Television Terror. The episode opens up with the Crypt Keeper, of course. If you didn't already know, he introduces each episode of the show. You can't really see it here, but he actually has the same exact eyes as Chucky because Kevin Yeager, the special effects expert, reused them. Anyways, I just thought that was interesting. He says, "Hi, Mom." And then he tells us that he loves home videos, especially when the home is haunted. Or in other words, he tells us a bad joke. Then he opens his book and begins the story, Television Terror. We're shown a TV news crew reporting outside this house, which we all have to assume is the haunted house, of course, considering it's got police line all around it. Horton Rivers, the host, tells us that
mass murder, dismemberment, suicide
all happened inside this Los Angeles house. First, he recounts the murders that took place here. And the murderer was an old woman called Ada Ritter, who was apparently a matriarch. She murdered 12 other old people just to collect their social security checks. Okay, I'm gonna do the math here because I'm quite interested in how much money she would have made off that. Let's have a look here. I've come to a conclusion. Ada Ritter would have been making roughly $85,000 a year off those stolen 12 pensions. Why would she kill 12 people just to make a small bit of money? The silly bitch. And just when we thought he said it all, he escalates the story by saying,
the bodies were dismembered and buried in the basement.
And then he says there may have been more. Fucking hell, I understand why this house is haunted now. And to make it worse, it's now haunted by a bunch of old people, now pensionless. But the absolute worst part of it all is that Ada Ritter is based on a real serial killer by the name of Dorothy Puente, who committed the exact same crimes for the exact same reasons. Horton tells us that Ada committed suicide to avoid being caught shortly after the authorities found out she was a murderer. And then Horton tells us that tonight he's going inside the house to find out if it's really haunted, and he's going to broadcast it on live TV. This is like one of those ghost hunting YouTube videos, but before the internet even existed. Horton calls over one of the TV producers, Sam, and this is where his true personality is revealed.
Who is that clown?
That is Roland Wirtschafter.
He asks that in relation to the psychic that he's about to interview. I think we know who the real clown is here. Just look at his smile and it tells you everything. And then Sam reads off a list of all the show segments that they could cover.
You got the Satanists, you've got the impotent transvestites, soldiers of fortune, a neo-Nazi black group.
And breast implants.
Breast implants.
Bingo. Danny strippers?
You know, I don't even think they're gonna live long enough to cover all that shite. They're going into a haunted house. And maybe it's for the best. Like, who wants to hear a f***ing story about breast implants? I thought it was only recently that our news feeds went to shit. And then Horton exposes the reality of the news by saying this about the audience.
They'll believe what I tell them to believe.
Shortly after telling Sam that he wants to make a headline about a couple who claim to have seen Marilyn Monroe and Jim Morrison from The Doors, who are both dead by the way, obviously. Sam expresses that she doesn't like the idea of this because she prefers genuine news over fake news. And that triggers Horton.
Just because you're sleeping with me doesn't give you a free ride in this job.
Oh, sleeping with him. He looks like my big toe. She needs to raise her standards. Anyways, the cameras are rolling and Sam is pissed. She decides to insult the TV screen that has Norton on it,
You extraordinarily putrid waste of human tissue.
instead of insulting him in person. The psychic basically says that there's no way in hell he would enter this house and that they shouldn't go inside either. But of course, they're all stubborn and greedy, those are the two words, and they decide to go inside anyways.
Follow me. If you dare.
Hey, you fucking dickhead.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with you there, buddy. They do a tour of the house, starting with the kitchen.
Beautiful.
The technician, Booth, clearly gets a rise out of anything bad that happens to Horton. I can just imagine him busting a nut when he gets attacked by a ghost. Oh yeah, speaking of Booth, the actor who plays Booth, Peter Van Gordon, later went on to play a ghoul in the season 6 episode Let the Punishment Fit the Crime. Next is the game room, home to one of Ada's brutal murders, as shown in this flashback. Moving on to the basement, where we see another flashback. This time she shoves a different old man down the stairs to join the other dead guys. Horton walks down the stairs to show us where the bodies were stacked. Then we cut to a commercial break about laundry detergent. And during the break, production basically just tells Horton to hurry the f*** up, that he's going too slow with the show. His response is,
What the fuck do they want me to do? I'm telling you, this is a great show. The ratings are gonna go through the roof.
I mean, is there any point in me even pointing out the fact that Horton is a narcissist? It's just obvious. Sam tells Horton to spice it up a little bit, to which his response is,
What am I supposed to spice it up with?
well, there's your answer. Turn off that commercial and get those f***ing cameras rolling. The ghosts ought to spice it up a little bit. Well, that didn't go too well because just as they go live again, the camera goes to shit.
Christ, we lost picture.
And now they have to roll another commercial. Sam notices the sounds of dripping water, which is unusual because...
Utilities have been off for years. That place should be bone dry.
So Horton goes to check it out, and he's greeted by a lovely, welcoming old man having a bath.
Trip, come here.
What, man? You're acting as if you've never seen a man naked before. He grabs cameraman Trip to show him, and of course, there's nobody there. Well, that was a quick f***ing bath. I take half an hour in the bath to get myself cleaned. It doesn't matter though. Because surely that's enough to prove to cameraman Trip that Horton hasn't gone insane. The camera comes back online, so they switch off the commercial and go live again. Everything just starts shaking, the light falls, a painting smashes, and even one of the doors bleeds like a person. After everything suddenly calms down, Horton interviews the psychic again, this time asking him what the hell is happening. He says,
A psychic impression and some poltergeist activity.
Horton asks him if he's in any danger, and the obvious answer is yes. But if they're in danger, why haven't they tried leaving? And who in the right mind would even attempt to enter a room that they're well aware a ghost is inside? Nobody, but Horton is doing exactly that, because he's not in the right mind, is he? He's got a screw loose in his head. Sam gets a call from the network and they tell her that people are absolutely enthralled by what's going on.
They love it. Whatever we're doing, keep on doing it. The phones are ringing off the walls.
Okay, so keep getting haunted by ghosts with the possibility of getting yourself killed, just to satisfy folks who are sitting on their asses watching TV. What a great idea. I will admit though, it's still better than talking about breast implants. Horton looks away for 2 seconds, and what is he greeted by when he turns back around? A dead cameraman Trip hanging from the ceiling.
Horton, who's got the camera?
You know, I was thinking the exact same thing myself. Who the is recording? It turns out it's one of the dead old people. Horton tries to run away, but the exit is blocked off by more old dead people. Booth asks Sam whether they should get Horton out of there or leave him in there. The answer would be simple if he was a genuine down-to-earth man. Get him out of there. But Horton isn't any of those things, so Sam says,
Keep him in there.
and she has this sinister look of gratification on her face as well. I know he's a bit of a prick, but he's still a human being. This might be a controversial opinion, but I think they should have gotten him out of there. The ghost of Ada Ritter goes after Horton with a chainsaw, but first, Sam has a few words for us. Hold on a second, why aren't you subscribed? Subscribe now. Ada's ghost whacks Horton with the chainsaw and smashes him out the window. Somehow he ends up getting a rope caught around his neck, and that's how he dies. And that's the end of the story. When I first watched it, I thought it would end with Sam also getting punished, because you know, she started getting all sadistic at the end. I thought she'd get what she deserved, but apparently not. Hold on a second, we can't end the episode without hearing a word from the Crypt Keeper about Norton.
No wonder he's such a hit on live. Or is it dead TV?
I can't take these jokes anymore. Anyways, that's the end of the episode. I genuinely enjoyed that episode. I can understand why it's rated as highly as it is. In a lot of the reviews, I see people talking about how they combined both horror and comedy in this episode. I think they did it flawlessly. The episode has its terrifying moments, but it's also quite funny. It's established from the very beginning that this Horton guy is a funny and that he's going to be the focal point of comedy for this episode. I mean, for feck's sake, we hear Horton talk about breast implants before we even see a ghost, which really set the tone for this episode. But let's steer away from the funny parts and talk about the main focus of this episode, the terror. It definitely lives up to its title, Television Terror, because that's exactly what we got. Television and terror. And I'll tell you one thing, it was actually pretty scary for me. Up until the halfway point in the episode, nothing paranormal even happens, other than the 2 flashbacks we get of Ada murdering some of the old people. But then at the halfway point, some of the comedy fades away and the scary stuff starts kicking in. Then we see that horrifying old man taking a bath in blood, followed by the doors slamming in and out, and seemingly another call for help by one of the ghosts from within one of the doors. And finally, we witness the death of cameraman Trip, then the death of the man himself, Horton. Basically, we see a boatload of horrifying stuff, the shit that could give any man nightmares. Any child either, because there's a surprising amount of people who have seen this episode as kids, even though they weren't supposed to, and traumatized themselves. When I first watched Television Terror, I was thinking, hold on a second, this came out years before the Blair Witch Project, before found footage was even a thing. I'd be surprised if this episode wasn't an influence for that movie, to be honest. I reckon it played a part in pioneering the found footage horror style. On to the next one. This one is called The New Arrival, and it follows a physical haunting by a zombie child. It's the 7th episode of the 4th season, and it's based on the original story The New Arrival, which is also from the EC comic book Haunt of Fear. It's also one of the highest rated episodes of the show once again, both by fans and critics. This is one of those genuinely scary episodes that causes me to just have a straight face the whole way through. There wasn't one point during my watch through that I smiled. I didn't crack a smile once, and I didn't laugh either. Because rather than merging comedy with horror like a lot of the other episodes, it fully focuses on eeriness and horror. The episode opens up with the Crypt Keeper confessing to a therapist that he can't seem to take a joke
I'm in a choke.
anymore, just like the guy in tonight's tale. He opens up the book and begins the story. We're shown a guy called Lothar, I could be pronouncing his name wrong, I don't know, played by Robert Patrick. He hosts his own radio show here. This time he's talking absolute rubbish about having sex with ghosts. On the way out after finishing his episode, another radio host, who's a child psychologist by the name of Dr. Alan Getz, asks him if his mother knows he talks that way on the radio. He says he doesn't know, but he does know one thing. He's gonna try to steal his time slot on the radio apparently. Dr. Getz sits down and does his job. He answers questions from parents who are worried about their children, live on the radio. A woman called Nora phones in and Dr. Getz gets pissed off because she has phoned in one too many times about her daughter Felicity, who apparently has done insane things. For example,
burning the house down, writing on the wall with feces, trying to electrocute the cat.
Nora's problem is that Felicity has been banging her head on the wall and screaming, and she wants Dr. Getz to come out to the house and help her out. Surprisingly, he agrees.
We're making a house call.
You can't do that, Getz.
But by the looks of it, only because of how pissed off he is at the excruciating amount of times that Nora has called him. He wants to settle this once and for all, and he's very confident in succeeding as well.
There isn't a child in existence that I can't help.
Anyways, he's brought management along with him. This includes his producer Bonnie and his bitchy boss who clearly doesn't want to be here, because she argues with Dr. Getz, claiming that he's holding her hostage. Straight after that, she tries to open the door to the house, which wasn't a very good idea. Because it was rigged with an electric shock. That's when Nora comes to the door to welcome everyone in with a smile. And a scream apparently. She bribes Felicity to stop screaming by offering her bubblegum. But Dr. Getz stops her because bribes reinforce bad behaviour. So he gives her a book that he wrote himself called The Art of Ignoring Your Child. But she already has it, along with a heap of other child psychology books. While Nora is fetching a cup of coffee, everyone discusses their doubts. For example, Rona doesn't even believe that there's a child upstairs. They go upstairs in an attempt to settle their doubts by finding the child to have a chat. Upstairs, Rona spots the child. Out of all people, it had to be Rona, didn't it? So she decides to be an idiot by following the child up to the attic. That doesn't work out too well as expected. Because now she's dead. Meanwhile, Dr. Getz and Bonnie enter Felicity's bedroom and discover an absolute shit ton of really weird toys. They come to the conclusion that what they're dealing with isn't a child at all. They think it's a fantasy child and that maybe Nora is role-playing as the child because of how small she is, and that therefore she's living a double life. That's when they discover Nora's body. Made a little mistake there, Rona's body, not Nora. And then all the doors shut themselves, but one door is unlocked. It's the one that goes up to the attic. When they go up to the top of the stairs, they spot Felicity down at the bottom.
Nora?
Dr. Getz tries to make his way down to her, but she shuts the door on him before he gets to her. Meanwhile, the ceiling fan rips Bonnie to shreds and knocks Dr. Getz out. So while he was knocked out, Nora saw it as the perfect opportunity to tie him up.
Now look here, you sick bitch. If you don't untie me now, I'm gonna kick your f***ing head.
Nora leaves to go and fetch Felicity, and when she arrives, Dr. Getz kindly offers for her to sit on his lap so that he can perform some love therapy on her. Ultimately, to bribe her into untying him so that he can try to choke her out.
The only way to beat bad behavior is with worse behavior. Hey, Nora, I know it's you.
But he discovers that his hypothesis has been wrong the whole time. It's not Nora dressed as a little girl. It's a disgusting zombie that's been dead for over 40 years. Nora turns Dr. Getz around to reveal to him all the other child psychologists who have visited over the years but haven't been able to help, and they're all decomposed bodies. None of them knew what to do to help Felicity, apparently, according to Nora. Nora puts on Felicity's favourite radio show, which just so happens to be Dr. Getz's least favourite radio show.
Today we're gonna talk about sex.
It's the one featuring the weirdo from the start of the episode who was yapping on about having sex with ghosts. The Crypt Keeper shows up to say,
You were right, Doc. A little smotherly love was all I needed.
And that he's sending this doctor to join the others. And that's where the episode ends. I can see why this episode was rated as highly as it is, because the premise of it is so explorative and unique. I felt like I was actually watching behind the scenes footage of a radio show at the start when Dr. Getz came on. So that just shows how realistic it was. Well, up until the point where we're introduced to a zombie girl who haunted a house for 40 years, that is. That's when everything got all eerie and the scary stuff started happening. Like the first sighting of the zombie child, Felicity. Rona wasn't even a tad freaked out by the fact that she was running past her like that, down the hallway. Rather than getting the hell out of that house, she decided to go follow the child, which led to her death. The second death was absolutely brutal though. Bonnie got impaled by this ceiling fan somehow. Obviously, the scariest part has to be when Dr. Getz accidentally unmasks Felicity after trying to choke her to death. And we find out that she's not actually an innocent little girl, she's a revolting zombie that has been haunting the house for 40 years. Imagine Nora didn't interrupt Dr. Getz while he was choking Felicity out. He'd have killed the bitch, which would have been a deviation from your average Tales from the Crypt episode. Anyways, just looking at that bitch dressed as a child and performing childlike mannerisms, like dancing around in circles at the end to her apparent favourite radio show, creeps me the hell out. There are some Tales from the Crypt episodes, I say some, I mean many, that are just laughable, but this one is the opposite, it's freaky. I reckon it's one of the most intense episodes. Enough of all that, let's talk about House of Horror, which actually fits really well after having just watched the new arrival, because this one also features monsters rather than ghosts. Even though the monsters in House of Horror don't actually haunt the house, they just infest it and use it as their hunting ground. I'm not gonna say any more, I don't want to spoil it. It's the 7th episode of season 5 of Tales from the Crypt, and it's based on the original story House of Horror, once again from the EC comic book Haunt of Fear. I think this is one of the most underrated and least talked about episodes of the show, which is a shame because it's actually good. Definitely not as good as Television Terror or anything like that, of course, but it's hard to find a bad episode of Tales from the Crypt. Even if I watch a horrendously cheesy episode of the show, I still enjoy it, you know? The show just has this feel to it that grabs your attention. I don't know if that's nostalgia talking, but I'll just say that anyways. I have one fun fact for you just before I start the episode. The haunted house in this episode was actually reused for the Dan Aykroyd movie featuring Chevy Chase, John Candy and Demi Moore called Nothing But Trouble. That movie may have rubbish ratings, but I'm sure if you've seen it, you can agree with me when I tell you that it's got a pretty good set. Now I have nothing more to say, nothing but trouble, you know. So let's just get into the episode. The Crypt Keeper appears to be a judge, and he accuses us of watching too much Tales from the Crypt. Yeah, that's right you. Stop watching so much Tales from the Crypt, okay? That has to be the first time that I've ever agreed with the Crypt Keeper. And then he opens up the book and begins the story, House of Horror. We're shown a bunch of college boys. The story actually centres on them, by the way. And they're dossing in their fraternity home. One of them is playing a video game and not watching where he's going. Nothing new here, we see that kind of thing every day nowadays. Reminds me of when Pokemon Go came out. People would just be mindlessly walking about the streets with their phone in their hands without watching where they're going, like this. Like, I'd even see people on their iPads. It was that mental, like this, just walking around. Anyways, on top of that, one of them is reading a porn magazine, and another is cleaning the floor with a paintbrush in his underpants. Then we're shown 2 more cleaning the floor in their underpants. And written on their asses is "kick me." Someone please tell me what the hell I'm witnessing.
Get back to work before I paddle your asses.
Apparently a bunch of slaves, and they're referred to as the 3 pledges. This one is Arling, the main one, this is Henderson, and he's Waters. The slaveholder is Les Wilton, and these are his brothers. He takes it a step further.
You forgot to kiss the soles of my shoes.
You know, if it was me at this stage, I'd have knocked this out. He'd be the one kissing the soles of my shoes, along with my ass. We discover that he has a wall of shame with a guy on it called D.D. DeWitt, who was a former slave of Les. But he couldn't take the torturing any longer, so he had a nervous breakdown. Straight off the bat, this is dark comedy. This idiot kisses his shoes instead of knocking him out like a real man.
Wait for him one night behind the door. Crack him in the head with the baseball bat.
Finally a bit of common sense, but if you were going to do that to him, why haven't you done it already? Arling answers the door to In hell, a fine woman called Mona. Anyways, the reason she's here is because she's from the sorority house called Delta Omega Alpha. What is with these names? Delta Omega Alpha. Couldn't they just have called it Girls' House or something? Now there is actually a reason for this name, and it's revealed later on, but it's still very obnoxious. As I was saying, she's here to affiliate her sorority with theirs for events, and she wants some of the lads to come over to their house tonight to get a taste for what it's like. Les declines her offer and makes an excuse about having a final pledge ritual tonight. I'm just noticing that there's a poster in the background that says "We are what we watch." Maybe the show is trying to tell us something. We watch twisted shit like Tales from the Crypt. Maybe we're all psychopaths or something. I can't quite make out who it is on the poster, but it looks to me like the Crypt Keeper. Anyways, Les invites Mona and her girls to come over for the ritual tonight, and she agrees. I can't take any of this seriously when during their conversation there's 3 lads crawling around like dogs on the floor in their underpants. It's time for the ritual, and 2 of the brothers are driving the 3 pledges to where it's going to take place, the haunted house. They admit that they don't agree with Les, and then...
End of the line, kiddies!
Ta-da! Look who it is, Les himself. On the way to the haunted house, one of the lads tells the story about how the house came to be haunted. It was owned by a hermit who had a cough that could be heard from a mile away, and that's why it's called Coffer House. The corrupt mayor kicked the hermit out of the house to give the house to a fraternity. Then the hermit killed himself. To wrap it all up, 9 fraternity brothers were found murdered by an axe in the house. And who was it that killed them? A bloke in a cloak who was coughing loud enough that he could almost choke. I'm actually quite proud of that rhyme, I do have to say. Les makes the pledges play a little game. Each of them has to go inside and flash their lights at the 2nd floor and attic windows, and that's it. Simple, right? No, it's really not that simple. Not for the pledges anyways, because they're not aware at all of what Les has planned. He has the entire house rigged with fake scares to frighten them all. Les plays this off by saying,
Well, the joint's haunted, and Mr. Axe Murderer's ghost doesn't like visitors.
Henderson is first. Off he goes inside the house. First he hears coughing from the speakers.
Great coughing, Sparks.
And then a fake dummy scares the living shit into him.
He damn near killed me.
If it was real, it wouldn't have happened so soon. Usually in haunted houses, the ghosts tend to play with you for a little bit before they actually come out, you know? Henderson gets to the 2nd floor window and flashes his light. But then...
Jesus, that sounded like Henderson.
Well, no shit, who else would it have been? The housemaid? Henderson is taking ages to get up to the attic, so they send Waters in after him. And then we see this in the window. It's up to you to decide whether that was real or just a dummy. Waters hears the coughing from the speaker, and then he puts his hand on the railing of the stairs, which isn't a very good idea, because now he has ketchup all over his hands.
Strawberry jelly.
Well, alrighty then, strawberry jelly. I raise my arms and stand corrected. Looks like someone else also raises their f***ing arm. When asked why they're taking so long in there, Les's response is...
Because they're f***ing with us, that's why.
Les tries to make Arlen go in next, even betting him $100 if he makes it to the 2nd floor. The only thing that actually encourages him to go inside is this.
$100 would buy us one terrific dinner date.
And honestly, I don't blame him at all. Inside, Arlen hears the coughing from the speaker, of course he does. And then we see this. A fella with a scythe. Once again, is that a fella who's part of the prank, or is that an actual Grim Reaper? That's up to you to decide. I have to admit, he has got a pretty good costume from Spirit Halloween if it's fake. After hearing him scream for his life, the brothers go inside to check out what happened.
Take a good look, asshole. It's just a dummy with a stupid mask we rigged.
Judging by their reactions, it's clear that even they didn't know that there was a Grim Reaper just wandering around in there. So apparently that part wasn't a setup. Not set up by them anyway. Les says that the story of the place being haunted is a load of horse shit. After whining for 2 minutes and being a pussy, he finally starts heading up to find the other 2 pledges. And then this happens.
Hey, Sparks, cut that out!
Wasn't me.
Les is jumped by the Grim Reaper and shits his pants. When he takes off his mask, it's not a real Grim Reaper at all. It's D.D. DeWitt, the guy Les had on his wall of shame back at the start. He's clearly proud as hell, so he stomps downstairs with his newfound gratification. And then Les continues upstairs to find the other two pledges. One of the brothers asks DeWitt if he's the one who set up the severed arm as a scare prop, and he says it wasn't him. Oh, what the hell is that? A human skull or some shit? A bunch of girls show up and say,
DOA is an all-ghouls sorority.
And then they reveal that they're all flesh-eating ghouls, and Les is for
dinner.
But it doesn't end there, even more ghouls show up, along with Mona, who now has a f***ed up face. Bloody hell, I can't believe I've been calling a ghoul attractive this whole time. It's one of those classic twists in Tales from the Crypt, where the asshole gets what he deserved. That's the end of Les now anyways. Now he's splattered up there on the wall of shame. I bet all those guys downstairs are wondering when Les is gonna head back down to them. Well, his actual head was thrown back down to them. I'm sorry, that was actually horrendous. That was the worst joke I've ever made. And that's where the story ends. But of course, like always, we can't end without the Crypt Keeper showing up. This time, he says that he knows college costs an arm and a leg, but this is just ridiculous. Followed by his obnoxious laugh. And that's the end of the episode. That was actually a really fun episode, and contrary to what most people think, I think it was great. It definitely has a very weird premise to it, you know, with the slave kids and all that. But it ends up pulling it off pretty well, especially when they leave their fraternity home and head off to the haunted house. Because there, the college boys think they're in control of everything as they play their scary noises through a speaker and set off their jump scare dummies. But they're really not in control, not at all. There's a guy in there pranking them back, and even worse, we find out in the end that there's also a bunch of real ghouls in there. Overall, if I'm being honest, the scariest part for me was watching that bunch of lads crawling around like babies in their underpants. That freaked me out. No, all jokes aside, when I saw that arm flying out the window, that was pretty scary. Especially because when I looked closer at it, it clearly wasn't fake. And then to further prove my point of it not being fake, one of the brothers, Sparks, asks D.D. DeWitt if he's the one who set up the severed arm to scare the pledges. When he said it wasn't him, I knew something was up with the house 100%. And finally, I was kind of freaked out by the fact that the ghouls went so far as to behead Les in the final scene. That was brutal. Overall, the atmosphere in the haunted house was genuinely eerie and fit the premise well. I can see why they reused it in that movie Nothing But Trouble, to be honest. It's better than bloody breaking it down or something, at least they got some use out of it. Shall we keep going, yeah? On to the next one. We're on to another episode that once again fits as a nice companion to the other three. It's the last episode of them all, and it's the lowest rated in my ranking. It's called Surprise Party, as well as being one of the lowest rated episodes of the entire Tales from the Crypt show. This one is going to be really quick though, because it's a slow burner and the haunted house shows up halfway through the episode. It's the 11th episode of the 6th season of Tales from the Crypt, and it's based on the original story from the EC comic book The Vault of Horror. Once again, I have a few fun facts about this before we actually get into it. One of the stars of this episode is played by Jake Busey. I thought it was interesting that he was also in the movie The Frighteners 2 years later. That movie was originally going to be a Tales from the Crypt movie, but Robert Zemeckis, the producer of it, thought that the script was too good and too uniquely suited to Peter Jackson's directorial style. Peter Jackson is the absolute legend who directed all the Lord of the Rings movies, by the way. That's all I have to say, let's get into the episode. We start with the Crypt Keeper who's out skiing and finds a skiing trip hack-exhilarating. Then he says tonight's terror tale is also hack-exhilarating. He opens up his book and we begin the story, Surprise Party. A man by the name of Ray arrives at a lodge the night before he intends to go to the farmhouse that he has inherited from his father. The owner of the lodge tells him that she's seen lights and heard sounds coming from the farmhouse, and then warns him,
God be with you. Good luck, whichever one you believe in.
Ray decides to just go now and check it out. He can't even wait till the morning. On the way, we see a flashback where we find out that Ray killed his father for giving the farmhouse to charity instead of him. Ultimately, he killed him so that he could steal the house back. But before he killed him, his dad said,
Ray, I'm doing it for your own good.
What a guy.
and then went on to warn him about the house being haunted. When Ray arrives at the farmhouse, he's greeted by a bunch of mostly teenagers having a party. He tells them to leave, and at first they act like he doesn't exist, but upon saying,
My name is Ray Wells.
they recognise the name and realise whose son he is. Clearly, they're overjoyed about this for reasons we don't know yet, so they bust out some moves on the dance floor. One of the girls by the name of Josie spots Ray,
Where'd this hunka burning love come from?
and eventually seduces him into getting into bed with her. So on the inside we see that Ray is a pretty weak man, because he gave up his intentions of kicking everyone out just so he could sleep with a woman. But as those two are getting it on doing some extensive yoga,
I'm gonna tear you to pieces.
we're introduced to Josie's boyfriend Yank, who gives him a proper beating for going down on his girlfriend. But Ray knocks him over, grabs his gun, shoots him, and then smothers Josie for screaming.
You should have stopped screaming.
Ray tries to cover up what he's done by attempting to burn their bodies along with the entire house. But that doesn't go too well, because Josie and Frank show up as ghosts with third-degree scars all over their bodies. And then we find out that Ray's father literally burned the whole lot of those partygoers we just saw a minute ago, back in 1973, including Josie and Frank. That's 15 people he killed. Now they're all here to get revenge, but Ray's dad is dead, so they intend to kill Ray instead, because seeing as Ray seems just as bad as his father, they believe this revenge is justified. Killing him will apparently put them all to rest. He runs for his life. For some reason this reminds me of Evil Dead, but I can't quite grasp why. Anyways, the ghosts get what they want. They burn Ray alive just like his dad did to them back in 1973. We cut over to a scene that shows the aftermath of the house burning down along with Ray's body. And that's the end of the story, but once again we can't end the episode without the Crypt Keeper showing up. And of course he's at a party. Come on lads, are you ready for our final shitty joke of the day? He says, poor Ray, but at least he went out in a blaze of gory. And that's where the episode ends. That was a short one, wasn't it? I mean, in terms of episode length, it's completely average for a Tales from the Crypt episode. But there's just something about the pacing that results in me barely having anything to say. You can tell by the fact that I went through it in a flash. Remember what I said earlier about me even enjoying the bad episodes of Tales from the Crypt? Well, this is one that many people would consider bad. But personally, I wouldn't. Yeah, it may have slow pacing and it may be a little bit generic and campy as well. But who cares, it's Tales from the Crypt. All of those aspects defined and moulded the show into what it is today. I probably wouldn't even like the show if it was perfect. In fact, I don't like anything that's perfect. Everything has its flaws. The bottom line is that I enjoyed this episode. Unlike Television Terror and House of Horror, which were very reliant on comedy, Surprise Party wasn't. Similar to The New Arrival. It may have had hints of the usual dark humour in there, but barely enough to be noticeable. Not for me, anyway. I never thought I'd say this, but the Crypt Keeper's jokes were the funniest part about this episode. And usually he pisses me off. In a good way, though. I suppose this episode's humour was simply the whole surprise of Ray seeing a party full of strangers having fun in his dad's old farmhouse. And then the way they started ecstatically celebrating when they found out who he was. Because they knew that they'd be in peace that night after killing him. Now I'll talk about the main thing, the horror aspects of Surprise Party. Right at the start, the old lady warns Ray that she has seen signs of people inhabiting the farmhouse. She describes them as lights and sounds. So as we can see, this episode establishes that it's going to focus on horror over comedy. As opposed to Television Terror, where the episode began with a talk show host who wanted to make a news headline about breast implants. And House of Horror, where the episode began with a bunch of lads crawling around in their underpants. Surprise Party said, no, f that, we're going to make this serious. As did The New Arrival, and that spawned some genuinely terrifying moments. But the one I found the scariest was the twist ending, when the real physical appearances of the partygoers are revealed and we're shown the insane scars they got from the fire they were in back in 1973 that his dad set. It was especially creepy to see Josie, who just a minute ago was beautiful, looking like Two-Face from Batman. You know what? Everyone else was covered from head to toe in scars, but Josie was only half covered. At least she had a tiny bit of beauty left in her. Honestly, the scariest part of the whole episode has to be when the entire crowd of ghosts surrounded Ray and started making zombie noises. It might be the fact that the ghosts started to resemble zombies in a crowd rather than what they were, ghosts, mixed in with Ray's horrified facial expression in his final moments. That reminded me of Evil Dead, maybe that was it. Well folks, that was Television Terror, The New Arrival, House of Horror and Surprise Party, in a very random order I know, because it took a lot of effort to make this video. Most of it was recorded on the same day, but then I missed an episode by accident, so I had to go and write a script for that episode, and then fit it in. That was a lot of yapping, and that was a damn long video. I was actually writing the script for this in Google Keep Notes, but like a third of the way through I exceeded the maximum word limit, so I had to switch over to Google Docs. That just tells you how long it took me to make this video. Let me know what you think of these episodes in the comments, and let me know which one you prefer. I already know the vast majority of you are going to say Television Terror because everyone knows that one. I won't blame you either because that's my favourite one too. Let me know what other Tales from the Crypt episodes I should do on the channel, and if there's any other episodes from different shows you'd like to see me do, put them down in the comments as well. And if you haven't already, please do subscribe to the channel, okay? Right, nice one, I'll see you, good luck.